Complaints about death care coverage have been mounting across Philadelphia, with Gaudy Bay in particular struggling from a lack of coverage, with bodies piling up sometimes for weeks on end. This has raised questions about the city's handling of first responders, with mounting pressure from the region's residents for improved city service management across the board. After some research, the City Services Department has identified issues with zone control, with multiple instances identified of ambulances attending calls miles from their depot, with a huge amount of valuable time spent simply travelling to and from emergency calls. Therefore, the Mayor has decided to issue new work district policies to help minimise time wastage and therefore improve efficiency, alongside committing investment to a new crematorium and several new post offices. Oh, and they've also sold a small strip of land to developers designated to new affordable housing to support the overwhelming demand from wannabe actors to move close to the new ABC studios. Let's dive in. So this is going to be a slightly different episode to the norm, where we're going to spend half the episode managing our districts and our city services and trying to reduce all of these warning signs you can see flashing on the screen. And then the second half we'll do a slightly smaller build than usual, but still with all of the details that you'll be familiar with if you know my channel. So if you want to skip ahead to the build and not look at the management stuff, I'll put a timestamp on screen right now so you can skip ahead if you want to. But with this series, as per all of my other series, the focus is not only on aesthetics, although it seems like that's the main thing I'm interested in, which it is, let's face it, but I also want to create a functional and operating city. So with that comes with some need for some management at times, and that is what we're going to start off by doing today. And many of you have been telling me for a while now that our issue with all of these death care things is likely to do with district management, because we have done absolutely zero of that so far in this series. So yes, we have a whole bunch of hearse warnings down here. We also have some garbage warnings. I mean, this one never seems to go away, neither do these two. So I'm wondering if these two in particular are the case that I've fused different functional buildings together and it doesn't really like it too much. The pathfinding is having trouble getting to them. So we may not be able to get rid of these, but this garbage one may just be the placement of it on this node next to our road builder road here. Not too sure, but we're going to do our best anyway. But a lot of these other ones have no reason why they should be here, and they keep popping up. We keep having major death care issues. And not only that, I've just spotted in the background here, we have some power issues because our wind farm is overloaded, and we can see actually there's a bottleneck in the system right here. So I think the reason for this is because we've got our main power station here and it's all flowing down this one electricity line into the entire city. So I think if we add some diversions to this from other places around the power plant, so it's coming out here. So let's go here. We're going underground with some local power lines for this. And this is going to be pretty rudimentary, but hopefully it will fix it. And I'm going to add in a direct connection into here. And as you can see, that has immediately removed the bottleneck. So we're just basically giving the electricity an alternative route to take into the city. So it's now crossing across to this wind farm, and then this connects into wider connections up into, of course, the whole Tinny area over there, but also then connects back into Havenwood Village. So there's now multiple ways which that electricity is transferring around the city. So hopefully that'll avoid the bottleneck, because if we have a look at our info view, we do have enough electricity. We have more than enough. We're still exporting electricity and making money from that. So it's not a problem with how much we've got. That was purely a bottleneck, which is a feature actually I really like in Cities 2. I don't fully understand why it happens, because we haven't messed with our power structure in a really long time. And our building process has been relatively slow, let's face it. So yeah, it seems to happen randomly, which I guess maybe is normal and realistic, but I don't know too much about that, I'll be honest. But with that slight diversion, as I was saying, the main focus for this episode is to try and reduce some of these warnings. So what we're going to do is go around all of our city services and limit them to districts. So if I come up into the district tool here, you can see that most of our areas are covered by districts. We've got Gaudy Bay, obviously here, Atkinson, Golf and Country Club, the Dargreens Vineyard, we've got Few Haven, Havenwood, FewK Farms, FewK, and then the Few Haven Rail Yard, which extends out here as well. Then similarly over this side, we've got districts across everything that we have built so far. Now, the one thing I am thinking is that the Few Haven district here is relatively large. So I'm thinking I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller, and we're going to cut this area out of the district before we start doing our management. And we're going to give it its own district. So we're going to wrap this whole area, including the Paul Raymond High School, and we'll also actually include the radio mask in here as well. I think that produces garbage and the such like. It has employees in it, so I'd imagine it does. And would still need healthcare and death care services regardless anyway. Fire probably too. So yeah, there we go. So we've created our new district, which includes all of that. And I'm going to call this Upper FewHaven, because I can't think of a more original name. And we didn't designate it as a separate district. It was always built as part of FewHaven to start with anyway. So yeah, that's all our districts in place. So everything is covered there. So now what we need to do is come in and we're going to go service by service, making sure that we have coverage for each of these districts specifically. So if we take, by way of example, Gaudy Bay Police Station here, you can see it's not got any operating districts on at present. So what it means is the police cars from here are going to be going out to crime calls all over the city, including even out to Tinney, which is going to waste their time coming backwards and forwards, which means that the coverage in areas like Gaudy Bay, which is the area it's meant to serve, is going to actually be lessened. And the interesting thing I think here as well is in Happiness, I've never seen them talk about any of the sort of the fire, the police services in here. There's not even a mention of health here either. It says service upgrades. I mean, I'm not sure what that is, but it means it's difficult to tell actually how good the coverage is unless we come into our little info views. So let's actually start off with health here, for example. So actually at the moment, most of it is pretty well covered, bar some sort of extremities on the edge of FewHaven, on the edge of Atkinson over here. Not too worried about this piece of road because there's nothing built there at all at the moment. So that's not too bad, but let's come in and check all of our medical clinics. So for example, yes, Atkinson Medical Clinic. Let's designate it to Atkinson, but also the Golf and Country Club and the Vineyard here as well. And that means now that our medical cars from that medical clinic, or our ambulances, are not going to stray outside of this area. So that's going to be super, super helpful. And now what we need to do is go through and remember and find all of our other medical clinics. So for example, we've got Gaudy Bay Medical Clinic here, which actually, interestingly, I had already set to Gaudy Bay. I'm now going to include Oregon Point on it as well, just to make sure that is well covered. But that one is good to go. And see, this is the reason why I've split the districts here, because we do actually have a small medical clinic in Upper FewHaven and then one in FewHaven as well. There's actually one in Havenwood Village, indeed, too. So that means we can define these pretty strictly. So FewHaven Medical Clinic is just going to serve that area. Actually, I'm not sure what we do with the rail yard. We do not have a medical clinic near the rail yard now. Is this one big enough to cope with all of that, I suppose, is the question here. So we've got 55 out of 100 patients, 0 out of 5 ambulances in use. So I think for the moment, let's also add in the rail yard to this one, because this is the largest medical clinic we have in the city, I think, at the moment. It's just the default vanilla base game one, because we didn't have anything else when we placed that one in. But it serves the purpose pretty well. And then we can go to, oh, we haven't given this one a name. Hang on. Havenwood Medical Clinic. And then we're going to choose these 3 districts here. So that'll be nicely covered. And then we'll go to Upper FewHaven. And again, we'll select this as the operating district here. And then finally, we've just got one left, I think, in this particular area before we head over to Tinney. Yes, which is the UK medical practice here. So let's call that UK Medical Practice. And we'll select FewK and FewK Farms for that, because FewK isn't particularly big, so that should serve that whole area pretty well indeed. And then over in Tinney, so we do have 2 medical clinics here, and this one I think is substantially larger. So yeah, it can take 300 patients, whereas this is only 100. So with Tinney, we'll just keep it, I think, to Tinney for the time being. And then with our Outer Tinney Medical Clinic, that is a new district that I did put in preparation for this episode, we're going to select the Outer Tinney area, ABC, and the Tinney Technology Institute. The wind farm shouldn't need anything, so I'm going to leave that for now. But that will refine that operating district to those 3 areas. So, yes, that is all of our medical done. Now, if we go to death care, this is where we probably have the most problems. So, Atkinson Cemetery. Let's make sure that this... And if you click the wrong district, like I just did then with Oregon Point, you can just right-click to deselect it. So it's nice and simple here. So we'll choose all 3 of those for Atkinson Cemetery, and I am wondering, because that's not a huge population, if we should also include Gaudy Bay within this, because Gaudy Bay has the crematorium here, and then we have another cemetery in Few Haven, and then we also have the church in Few K. So the church in Few K can nice and simply just serve those areas. So let's go ahead and do that. Like so. And then Few Haven Cemetery is going to have to serve quite a large area. We only have one over here as well. So I'm wondering if we haven't really cooked enough death care into the actual city. I think that can serve the rail yard too there, so that'll be okay. But I do wonder, yes, if this cemetery should also serve Gaudy Bay and Oregon Point, and then we can have the crematorium serving essentially this whole district like that, hoping that there's not too many deaths in the Few Haven rail yard, which can't just then go to the cemetery, of course. So yeah, that does leave that area all covered. And then over here, I think we probably need a crematorium of some description in the tinny area. So we're not using very much of the church's capacity here. So we do have both extended upgrades on it. Yes, we do on either side. And it's nowhere near full, so there's not really a problem with that. We should be okay with that, but I definitely think a crematorium is going to be needed somewhere in this side of the city at least when we come to future development, so we'll keep that in the back of our minds. So yeah, let's see how that goes, and then we're going to do the same thing with police, fire, and also rubbish as well, actually. So with fire and rescue, we've got a number of fire stations, actually. There's one in pretty much every district. Interestingly, we didn't put one in Few K, but there is one in Few K Farms that I think I've just dotted on the end there. Yeah. Slightly out of place, but that's okay. Then we only have one across the whole of Tinny over here as well. But Few Haven is pretty well served with fire trucks, I would say. So perhaps we make both of these fire trucks applicable to all of Havenwood and Few Haven. That seems like overkill there. We probably didn't need those. But there we go. Right, so let's start with Atkinson. And again, we can do those 3 familiar districts there. Then we'll go to Gaudy Bay and select that and Oregon Point. Upper Few Haven is going to be well served. And actually, I'm looking at all this green now in this horrific viewpoint. But we're actually pretty well covered for fire service, it would seem. Oh no, we don't need the rail yard there. There we go. Which is quite good news. And I think I've just spotted here, yeah, our church is not in the boundary of our Tinny district. So let's rectify that as well, just to make sure that that is also included. Okay, so that's fire done. And then finally, police. So yeah, we have one police station across this entire area, one across Few Haven. We do have a designated one in the rail yard. And Few K does not have one. Now, I'm pretty sure this is a large one, isn't it? It's not that large. It's not that large. So I think we need a police station somewhere around Few K there to make sure we're serving that area pretty well. Otherwise, we have got one in each district aside from that. So again, we can do the same as we have done previously and limit these to their specific areas. And then let's see if we can find an appropriate place for a police station here. We have, of course, got the UK police stations. That could be something that we use. But it is particularly large, so I'm wondering... Yeah, we could put it potentially over this side next to our half-done service area, which we started on a live stream, which we're going to be finishing on a live stream very, very soon as well. So come and join us if you want to see some more slow-paced, casual, tiny details, including our rat and raccoon-infested trash area at the back of our service area here. That's one little part of it. But yeah, I think let's put the UK police station over this side, and that's something that we can detail up on the stream when we come to finish that service station as well. So we can just put a small service exit into there for the time being, and that will work quite nicely, I think. So one other thing to take a look at here as well is mail. So our post, we've actually failed to put in mailboxes after I was so keen on it. over this entire side of Tinny. So let's go ahead and drop a few into here. So we'll come off this horrendous info view. There we go. Now we can have one on that corner, and we'll dot them around throughout this neighbourhood here. That seems to be pretty well covered actually with just those couple there. We can add one into the industrial yard. Let's do it between our car lot and the rest of it here. And then it would be good to have something in the office park. So let's add that. Let's add that on the side of the park area here. And then we'll add another one. Yeah, on this commercial corner, I think would be quite nice for that. And then we do have one there. So that should be okay. Let's add in another one for this industrial district here. And we'll also add one in fairly close to our Oregon Broadcasting Company studios. And this is the area that we're going to be filling out later. So that will keep them fairly well served there. So that should rectify that little problem. Well, now if we can find the post office, let's select these districts as its operating area. So it's not going outside of that. And the rest of the city, I'm noticing we're quite underserved actually in a lot of places. So we only have one small one over here. I think that's another small post office. And then the Atkinson post office. And that's it. So it's not very many. So it'd be ideal to have another one in FewK really somewhere. And potentially another one on the edge of Few Haven here. If we can just squeeze in a small one somewhere, that would be quite beneficial. But they're all relatively large buildings, which causes me a few little problems here. And I don't really want to destroy the green belt between the cities. So is there somewhere else that we could potentially add this? I mean, that's in the middle of our office park here. I don't really want to get rid of too many jobs in that area. We could potentially demolish a house or two here to fit this in. Maybe if we just go for one house. Oh, I feel bad though. Then we could have a little post office on that corner. Does that feel appropriate though? I guess it's sort of close to the commercial centre, the railway station here. So it's not too much of a bad position, I don't think. It's tough. I find it really difficult to destroy even so much as one house. So yeah, this is pretty difficult for me. In fact, that house looks really, really out of place here. So perhaps we add the post office on this corner somewhere. Yeah, let's do that. And I've made the Parker family and their 5 dogs, sadly, homeless. Okay, we can do a spot of detailing around that a little bit later on, but that does fit in. So let's just go back to check on mail. So yeah, both of these can serve all of Few Haven, the Few Haven Rail Yard and Haven Wood as well. And then perhaps we do need another one over here, which could potentially sit on the out of town there, or even actually just in behind these houses would work quite nicely. So yeah, let's do that because we can just tuck it into this little small space here. Get rid of that tree. And that'll do quite nicely. We also clearly have some issues with stored mail here, so I'm just going around upgrading a lot of our small post offices. I think we're also going to require a post sorting station sometime in the near future to handle all of this mail. And then finally with garbage, we've got our landfill, we've got our recycling centre, and we also have a major death problem in Tinny, which we'll come back to in a second. We've made it worse. And we also have our other recycling centre over here. So with this one, I'm going to select this to only these areas so it stays within this region. I think I'm going to leave the main recycling centre as covering the whole city because it's not at capacity, it's having no problems currently as is. But then with the landfill, I'm going to select it to only these specific areas around here. So those ones. And I think that'll be okay. So FewK and the Few Haven Rail Yard are only going to be served by the main recycling centre, which I think will be all right. But we'll see how that goes. We might even actually, because again, the landfill hasn't really struggled too much since we've added in the recycling centre. and some of the garbage can be sent over to there, it hasn't struggled and it's not actually filling up. So I know a lot of people have said it must be full by now, but it keeps emptying and it keeps kind of processing, so it seems to be fine. I haven't fiddled with it, I haven't touched it since maybe a couple of episodes after initially placing it, when it did fill up and I just replaced it a little bit sneakily. I think I mentioned it in the episode for clarity's sake, but yeah, there we go. The Tinny Recycling Centre can serve all of Tinny, and then our main recycling centre can serve the whole of the city at the moment. So let's see what's going on. Death care is a problem. This is not working out so well. Is it because we've got a crash on the road and traffic's blocked? I mean, there's not really any traffic here. There seem to be several vehicles involved in this collision at the moment, but we won't focus on that too much. But the death care is a problem, so let's just check. I did put this all on the correct places, yes. So I think, like I said, we are going to need a crematorium round here. And it's odd how restricting the districts has made this back up now, because this wasn't like this before. We've got tons and tons of hearse warnings here. So I do find that a little bit strange, but it is what it is. So we need a crematorium, I think, rather than another cemetery, because that's going to process them a hell of a lot better. So our default crematorium does have more hearses in it and a higher storage capacity, but the French one is a much, much smaller footprint. So it's difficult to know what is best here, and also where we can actually sit it in. I mean, we could sit it in at this point. It's going to ruin the terrain there, so I think I'd rather not do that. We obviously have our new area, but I wasn't really planning on putting a crematorium in it, but we could, for need's sake, design something around a crematorium if we need to. So let's just turn off snapping to roads. Can we slot it in next to our medical centre like this? We can, actually. So perhaps we do that. If we align it to the road sideways on, like so, we can leave a bit of a green border there that we can fill out a little bit more substantially, I suppose. And then we can add in a road. In fact, actually, let's just shift it back a tiny bit, because I'm noticing that yellow line is now on the pavement. I think it'll be good to have some form of border or fencing there to separate the area where the hearses are from the pavement. And then we can just add a simple alleyway connection into there. And then hopefully that should be all right. So let's select the operating districts here as well, and we'll choose all of our whole Tinny general wider area, including the ABC and the Technology Institute. And let's see if that actually helps. So I think we're going to have to wait for the end of the episode to see that. I mean, none of our warnings, our hearse warnings, seem to have gone away at all so far. I have mentioned in previous episodes I've actually had issues with this one where it didn't look like it was actually doing anything. Yeah, it's consistently 0 out of 10 vehicles in use, but we do have deceased in the actual crematorium as well as a processing speed, which it hadn't had previously, so I can only assume it's working. But look at those hearses stacking up. They're totally and utterly inefficient at the Gaudy Bay crematorium, and I'm not sure that there's much that we can really necessarily do about that. But just before we come on to some building, a quick word from today's video sponsor, which is Instant Gaming. If you're perhaps looking to pick up the Modern Architecture or Urban Promenades Content Creator Packs, or even the base game of Cities Skylines II, and in fact any game of your choice including Farming Simulator, Civilization 7, the whole Sims shebang, Planet Zoo and all of its corresponding DLCs. Please do use my link in the description of this video to go and see what amazing deals can be had on this massive variety of games. And we also have a monthly giveaway, which is again linked in the description below, where you can win a game of your choice. So go and bag yourself a deal, check out the link, and also help to support the channel. And just before we dive into that, we've had another crash over here. So there seems to be a lot of accidents happening right now, but it does remind me to talk about one little difference you may have noticed. And that is the look of the road. So I have finally caved and installed Road Wear Adjuster mod. So if I just show you the options for that. And I've just installed it and it automatically goes to the reflavoured option. So that's with texture brightness at 1, opacity at 0.4, smoothness at 0.4. And it is quite a subtle change, but I think it makes a huge difference to the look of our roads. Like, it doesn't look quite so kind of stark white lines everywhere. And I was just thinking to try and find somewhere where we did put in our net lanes to show people driving in and out of areas. And now I can't think of anywhere I've particularly done that. Oh yes, over here. So you can see the net lanes work in the same way. So it's the same texture coming in and out of these car parks here. And I just think it's a hell of a lot nicer. And you can essentially remove them if you adjust the brightness all the way down like that. Or if we put the brightness sort of halfway up, you can actually see in the background it coming back in. So we can make it a lot more subtle if we reduce that. And you can also invert it as well if you play with those settings. So you've got darker lines instead of the whiter, brighter lines. I quite like it with just the settings that the mod actually comes with. So just very simply 1, 0.4, 0.4. I think it looks quite good. It just tones it down a touch from those vanilla options. Yeah, so a great little mod there from HX 2003. Thank you so much to all of the amazing modders in this game. You make it incredible. But yeah, wanted to mention that before we come on to today's build. So, for today, we're going to be looking at this tiny little space here, which is even smaller now, actually, than what I had planned with this great big crematorium in there. But is this working? We've got 4 out of 10 out. Okay, we're getting some... Oh, hang on a second. All of the warnings have gone from this side of the city. There's still a few over in Pew Haven. Maybe it was the crash that was backing things up. Maybe we didn't actually need the crematorium. But I do think it was probably necessary over here anyway. Anyway, going back to it. So I had a few of you mention with the broadcasting studios now in place, we need some low rent housing around here to accommodate some of the poorly paid actors and that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to be doing. We also have pretty high demand for high density across the city. We've done very, very little of it, really, for having a 40,000 population city at the moment. So a little bit of low rent housing over here I think would be nice. And I've got some ideas for some formations and some extra little details we can do. And part of me is thinking about the sort of typical UK housing estates where they have garage lots on them. So that's something we're going to be exploring here. But one of the key assets I want to use here is one of the China buildings. We're looking for a 2x4. Yes, this one. Because I don't think it's as large. Well, it's definitely not as large as some of the vanilla low rent options. But I also think it has a charm about it. So it doesn't look like super low rent. It just looks like a kind of average block of flats. So I think it could fit into this part of the city quite nicely next to our fancy broadcasting studios over there. So I think a nice block of various levels of these will go really, really well. And as you can see, if we go up the levels, so to level 3, get a slightly higher block here. So we'll be mixing in some level 3s with some level 1s and 2s, which are both the same asset, just to be clear on that. And also level 5, which is even slightly taller. We may use some of these, but I think we're probably going to stick more towards the level 3 height, so it's not too tall and dominating in this area. But before we start placing down buildings, we do have some terrain issues, shall we say, in this area. So we do have this slight slope uphill that we need to work with, which is going to be a little bit challenging, but not out of the realms of possibilities here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take the level at this point and we're going to create ourselves a plateau, which is going to be the first sort of area within the complex here. And we'll go just about up to where the sound barrier is, push it as far as we can go there so we get a nice little section of this cliff texture in here. And then for the lower part, we're also going to grab this lower level here and push this up against it. And then we'll work on how we're going to deal with that boundary in the middle in a little bit. Let's go back to our low rent housing. So we've got the level 3 here, which is quite tall. Now I want to design these in a way where we're going to have essentially this road coming in. So let's grab our alleyway road here. This road's going to come in here and it's going to go out into a garage area essentially at the back here. So if we just turn off snapping for a second so we can try and get it nice and parallel to that sound barrier. Something like that. And then let's find the garage asset. So this is the one we're going to use, which is the taxi depot, taxi garage, vanilla ploppable version of it, because it works pretty well as a kind of estate garage area, I think, if we put these all in one big row. So let's line them up to the road like this, and we have just about left enough room between the road and the sound barrier there, and I want to try and get them nicely in line with that. And then we're just going to place these all in a big row like so. And this is something that's pretty commonly found on UK housing estates, like I mentioned. I don't know how common it is in the States, when you've got big kind of blocks of flats or condos, like to have these sort of communal garage areas. In fact, we could just leave it like that. I think I'd then also quite like to round this off with a couple at the end here. So let's actually just place one in like that and another one like so, which gives us quite a nice edge. And then we can also come in around this side. Maybe we'll create a little area at the end here of garages. We can have a little cut through the corner of them like that. So there are lots of garages to serve the blocks of flats here. Not every flat will have a garage. There'll be some that will come with a garage and others that won't. So it's kind of, I guess, pick of the draw which flat you get, whether it comes with a garage or not. And then we can go ahead and start placing in our residential blocks here. So I think we're going to have the first one as a tool block. And I'm going to line it to the road, but then I'm going to move it back in a second. And then we can drop down in height as we come towards the road here, and we could potentially even have another two. And I'll play with the colours and things like that in a bit, but then what I am going to do is just pull this slightly further away from the road, and we'll worry about the surfaces in a minute, because I quite like to have a nice grassy border and less of a sort of solid concrete border out to the front of it here. And then with these two, we can just pull that one further back. And this one could even be aligned to the road this side. I don't think there's anything that's sort of stopping us from doing that. No, that's okay. So they're in a little bit of a formation here. Let's just pull that one in slightly. And this one is slightly out of sync with the others now. Not sure if I like that or not. Maybe let's just straighten this up again. And in fact, we'll pull that back further so we've got this slightly staggered approach to it, which I think works pretty nicely. Now with the road, we're going to have to worry about that though again. So let's go ahead and just place in a small alleyway strip up to the front of it, which will keep it happy there, and we can do some nice surface work around it that side. And we can add in one more block, I think, right up against the back of these. So we've got a little bit of space in between. And then in here, we're going to add in a basketball court up against a retaining wall that we're going to add up to the top section here, which I will come back to in just a moment. Now here we have got these sinking into the landscape, which actually works pretty nicely. The vanilla propables. It isn't exactly the style I think we want here, so let's just shape this back a tiny bit. And I want to leave a really small gap behind those garages, because then what we're going to do is we're going to add in a pathway here, and we're going to force it to have a retaining wall on this side of it, which is going to give us what we want in this landscape. So let's turn off snapping, and we can get it in really tightly behind these garages here. And of course that's now gone on the wrong side, so let's change that over. We don't want it hooking into this highway, so we can't go quite that far with it. So to about there is going to be the maximum that we can achieve with that. I'll bring it up to here, and then we'll connect it into the road at a slightly different angle, and that'll become apparent in just a second. But now, if we grab the terrain, we can pull this up to the edge, and then we get our retaining wall in here. Now, I have just remembered the problems I had in the Dull Greens vineyard with this, so we're actually going to upgrade it to a slightly wider pedestrian path, which gives us just greater scope to shape the terrain around it without all of this craziness happening, which does not look good. Now, this end seems to have hooked onto the highway. Yes, it does, so maybe it's a redraw needed here. Okay, so something like that isn't too bad. What I am going to do in the detailing time-lapse as well is add in our own little makeshift steps, hopefully using benches. As long as it's not too tricky, we'll see how that goes. So that you can kind of step up from one level to the next is the idea for that. But that gives us some condos there. And then, as mentioned, I'm going to put in a basketball court and some recreation areas around here with a lot of surfaces and some little props in there to kind of detail that and make it feel like it's part of this complex in this space. I'm just noticing some of these aren't particularly straight, so let's just realign that. Wonderful. So on this upper level, I also want to introduce a little bit of commercial into here. So we're going to have this tiny little corner shop, which I think will fit in pretty nicely here and be kind of appropriate next to some of these estate areas. So we'll pop that in there. We'll worry about this terrain around it in just a second. We're then going to have the access road coming in at this point here, so we'll just draw that up here. And then in this corner, somebody, somewhere, and forgive me because I cannot find the comment anywhere, but someone mentioned after this studio build that in Television City in Los Angeles, there was actually a bar restaurant which a lot of the executives went to make a lot of the deals, which was quite close to the complex, not within it, separate to it. But it was kind of almost like an exclusive little restaurant place. So that's something that I'd like to add into here. But I kind of don't want it to look like any kind of bar, so we're not going to use any of the leisure venue assets for this. I'm thinking just some sort of generic commercial asset that we can make look a little bit more secretive, I suppose, is what I'd like to do here. Something which is small but effective, and actually this asset works pretty nicely, I think. It fits into the space pretty well as well. It's got some nice covered entrances in here, and it seems generally pretty generic, so I think I'm quite happy with that. One thing I think we are going to do here is move this up now. You'll notice all these people walking up the street. I actually, in between takes here, decided to delete this middle block, so I've now just made a load more people homeless because they had already moved in. I just thought from looking at it, it was far too closely packed for my liking, maybe a bit of a fire hazard in general. So we can use this open space in the middle here to create another kind of communal area in addition to the basketball court, which will go in here. So I think that'll work quite nicely. So yeah, let's just shift these all up a little bit. So I think something like that would be okay. What have we got here? DLC Hut. The best games in town. Nice. So we can do some detailing around that. I actually preferred the blue colour as well, so we might change that back. But we can do some detailing around that to make it seem a little bit more low-key. So I'm thinking no signage, for example. So we'll get rid of all of the signage here. And in fact, let's just let's change the colour now. Yeah, I am thinking that darker blue has a slightly more tasteful look to it. We can get rid of some of the props around the back as well. Like that, and then we can tidy up the surfaces and things when we come to detail in not too long, actually. But there we go. That'll be our exclusive restaurant where the execs go to make their deals, which is very nondescript on the corner of the road, like that. So for our extra housing complex, I want to use some of the US Southwest Pack condo assets, so like medium density ones. They're not technically low rent, but I think because they're fairly dense housing, it could be deemed as reasonably low rent at least. And I really like these ones, which have that kind of extra splash of colour on them. They look super modern. Really, really like these assets. So we could say it's a little bit nicer than our grotty estate that we have down there. But we have a few options with these as well, because these square blocks here blend really, really, really nicely into these blocks as well. So we can just add one right next to this one, for example, line it up nicely to the edge here. And then it's kind of like a semi-fusing, which works super, super well because obviously it's the same balconies. It's essentially the same asset. We've got the same brick around the bottom and all that kind of thing. So it works really nicely from that aspect. We do have a little bit of window covering up here, but I guess the bottom of those window frames are almost on the top of that wall. So I think I can deem that acceptable, just about. So yeah, what I'd like to see in here is a big kind of square block of them, but I do want to make this road more cobblestone, so we're going to cover it up with some sort of cobblestone or tile surfaces so it looks a little bit more fancy, shall we say, here. So I kind of don't want the idea that cars can come in here and park. So with that, I am also going to add in a car park using our alleyway car parking roads here, just at this point. So we've got some parking for the housing, but it's not super excessive and it's separate to where they're actually living. So they can park when they come in here. And then we can add in another alleyway road, maybe slightly offset around about this point here, and get in some more condos. And then what I would like is for this road to wrap around here in a big square, and we're going to do a swimming pool in the middle, which I guess you could argue may not necessarily suit Philadelphia's climate particularly well. But we do have a beach after all, so maybe it's hot enough for an outdoor pool. But I think it gives it some distinction and differentiation to the estate down here below. And it would just be a communal pool for everyone who lives in this particular complex. And it also reminded me a little bit of the condo complex we saw right next to Television City in California. Obviously, I know, totally different climates to what we have here, but I think it will work pretty well. So we can add in a few little variations in height like that. I think that's probably all that's needed. We've got a lot of detailing to do along this retaining wall here. Now that looks a little bit odd where it's pushing it down, so maybe we do need that a touch closer. It's a little bit flatter here. But we definitely want to tidy up the top of that. And then also add our swimming pool in here. And then to protect it from the highway, we're also going to do a row of trees or some kind of like privacy boundary essentially for that. But for the pool, what I am going to do is use our water mirror surfaces from El Glendo. Amazing pack. And the one that I'm kind of eyeing up for the pool is this one, the blue semi, because it's really light, which I think is what we need for a swimming pool in this space. We're going to make sure we've got all of those angles bang on. Got a nice rectangular pool in here. When you come down to look at it, it's super reflective. It looks really nice. And I think with some tiling, decals, surfaces, etc. around it, it will look quite swimming pool-like. Because if we went for the default water options, for example, like, you know, the blue or the ones that match CS, it's too dark blue. It doesn't look really super real. The other option we have is this blue translucent one, which I quite like, which is a bit lighter, but then we have the trouble of we can see the terrain beneath it. And I haven't found it sits nicely, so it's nice and visible on top of any other tile surfaces, which would be the ideal with this. So I think, indeed, this is the one that we're going to go for, which I think will look nice once we get those tiles in, like around the edge, like I said. And then we'll add in a security fence, so it's all fenced off. The children can't dive in there. We'll have our tiled roads around it. We'll get in some deck chairs and things around it too. And I think also what I would like to do is also add in one of these little security ladders, or roof ladders. Let's actually try this now together. Oh, I've just totally ruined it by rotating it. Oh, and it rotates in a super odd way. But okay, let's place this in, and then we'll use move it to get it where we want. But I'm thinking we could use this as almost like a pool ladder, was my initial thought. Wow, that has gone all over the place. Okay, let's use extra detailing tools to fix this. Yeah, well, it hasn't worked quite as well as I hoped, but I thought it'd look quite cool as a ladder. Of course, remembering we're not actually going to be able to see anything under the actual terrain, so it's a token gesture of a pool ladder, shall we say, at least. Okay, so we've got a lot of tidying up to do here. I'm wondering as well if I ban car parking on this side of the road, if people will actually park in our TV Studios complex. Let's just try that. And yeah, it has filled up a little bit more. I mean, they've got a ton of parking right there, so I'm kind of inclined to do that and to stop them from being able to park on this road. We don't have parking for the medical centre there, though, so we'll leave that small section, but get rid of this one. Now, we've actually got people using this path, and I'm very curious to see where they're actually going. Ah, they're flying up into that building. Wonderful. So maybe this is where we'll try and put in some makeshift stairs. That might be quite nice to get them up onto the second level from the lower level. We'll also add in path complexes all the way through here. And I'm also going to add in domes, invisible car parking spaces. So we don't necessarily need to do invisible, but in all of these garages here as well, so that cars can actually park in them, which I think will be quite a nice little touch for in there. So just before we come on to detailing, a little quick shout out to our Discord channel and all the lovely people that are in there. We are closing in on 1,000 people on our Discord. We're at 875 right now. If you want to come and join in some general chit chat, share your city creations, get involved in the latest community challenges with a chance to win a game of your choice, or get help or advice on the game as well, please do come and join our Discord. Help us get to 1,000 members. We're not too far away at the moment. Okay, let's dive into some detailing. So just before we dive into today's build, a little quick note on the earlier management that we did in this episode. It has failed miserably, is what you could say. We actually have more warnings than when we started out, and the issue that I have now is that there's loads of crime warnings popping up. And interestingly, if we take a look at our happiness panel, I was saying I haven't seen anything to do with police and health. Well, they have now appeared. So we have a negative happiness to do with high crime risk. And we also have a negative happiness when it comes to unreliable healthcare coverage. Absolutely blooming wonderful. That's what I say to that. Now the high crime risk, I'm not really sure what's going on here, because when I click on Gaudy Bay Police Station, we have 0 arrested criminals, we have 0 vehicles in use, yet we have multiple crime scenes around here. And I did actually go ahead and upgrade this road to the, well, newish now, it was a while ago, one-way pedestrian street. So it is now a vanilla road, essentially, so we shouldn't be having any issues. It can't be anything to do with Road Builder now as to why these aren't getting service access here, like it's all connected up. And yeah, the only thing I can think is that, again, there's another bug in the game where the services just stop working, seemingly. So I think with this, what I am going to do is actually delete out this lovely police station. Oh, I'm so sad to do this. I don't think we did too much detailing on there. In fact, I've just deleted out the surface. There we go. Let's bulldoze that building. And if we replace it in, is this now going to work? Now, obviously, this is going to cost us a little bit of money to do, so it's not exactly ideal, but it is what it is. So let's just move this back into place, and thankfully all of our lovely decals are still there. And there we go, we have got police cars now leaving. So yeah, we've got 2 of them already out. So hopefully that'll clear up some of this crime risk. I'll try and remember to come back by the end of the episode and check on that. If we come down here, this one is working in Few Haven. We've only got 1 crime scene over here, so I don't think that's too bad. I think it's mainly that Gaudy Bay one, but that is a really, really irritating bug. And again, with the death care, this is what I was talking about earlier. Oh, actually, we do have 1 vehicle in use, but we've got no bodies being processed, no deceased in there, which makes me think, again, it's not working properly, and that's why we've got a lot of those hearse warnings. Similar with this cemetery, no vehicles in use, yet in the operating district we've set it on. There are multiple hearse requests, we've even got an ambulance request over there. Again, 0 out of 5 ambulances in use. Honestly, I'm tearing my hair out a little bit. I think this is a case of, it is a simulation bug, which we know is not perfect in this game, which is unfortunate, but I'm not going to let it ruin my experience. I really am bothered by that happiness score though. I want that to go down. I don't want there to be a high crime risk. Oh my goodness, I've just seen a crash has just occurred over here. It's quite a large one. Wow, what is... Wow, it has literally just happened. We just missed that. Oh my goodness, this is a big one. We've got a cab over here. We've got a truck overturned on fire. We've got another one. Is that Jack? No, it's on top of a car. Oh my goodness. And then we've got another vehicle on fire over here. Wow, that was a lucky escape. Well done, you. And wow, yeah, another overturned Jack lorry. That was a major crash. I wish I'd actually seen that happen. I mean, I guess we sort of saw the end of it there, but yeah, there we go. It's things like that that I love in the game. I really love the fact that they've added in those features now, but can they just make sure services work and fix whatever bug this is? 6 out of 6 now in use, so hopefully... In fact, actually, all those crime scenes down there have now gone, so hopefully that is getting better. We've still got a -3 on high crime risk. Let's just go and take a look at our police info view. Yeah, and you see it's all Gaudy Bay. It's all Gaudy Bay, so that police station must have become non-functional. That's the only thing I can think. So by replacing that, it will hopefully clear that up. And yeah, that other one's gone now. Unreliable healthcare coverage though, I don't really know what you want me to do about that. I mean, let's have a little look. Yeah, it is places like here, Few Haven, rail yards that aren't covered, but we have set it as the operating district, so I think, and also the Golf and Country Club over here, so I think it is a case that we probably need some additional medical support, particularly in the rail yard area. I mean, I'm not too worried about the Golf and Country Club because no one actually lives here. Yeah, it's just 99 employees that work there. So I think with that, we'll help out the rail yard at some point and that should improve, but failed miserably. But let's take a little look at today's tiny mini build, shall we say. So we have got our little pool area over here and really love how this has turned out. Again, using the same technique that we used in the Oregon Broadcasting Company studios around the car parks here. I've just used Gargoyle XM's surface in the middle with some of El Galendo's. I can't remember if it was the French surface or the UK surface maybe around the edge here. But Gargoyle XM's soil surface works so well for these planters, these flower beds around the edge of the pool, which I love. The water texture actually is working really well, I think, as well. And even the ladders aren't too bad in the end. I have got some invisible walking paths all around the pool, so hopefully people will walk there eventually. We have got someone walking here now, which is lovely to see. And we do also still have people flying up here. Now, annoyingly, I actually put the stairs in slightly the wrong place. So they're coming up a little bit behind it. So it's not perfect. And I mean, they wouldn't even go up the stairs anyway because they kind of fly through the retaining wall. But it sort of works. I've just noticed that top step is wonky there. So we'll need to fix that. But the bench technique, I think it was all right. And then we've used some of the French pack huge wool prop assets around it just to frame that in. I could have put that one diagonal to match the stairs, but then I'd have this awkward bit sticking out at the back and I didn't really know how to cover it up. So I felt like this was the best technique in the end, and actually using those walls as a guide, we have managed to get some graffiti on the retaining wall over here, which, yeah, shout out to all the amazing modders as always. Really like that. And also had not noticed El Glendo had uploaded a FewCandy logo as part of one of his graffiti packs, so again, thank you for that. I absolutely love that. I hadn't noticed that until now, so there we go, we've got a little FewCandy wall over there. Ton more graffiti around our garages, which I did just change the colour of as well, so it's sort of a grey colour with a slightly darker roof. Loving these new concrete surfaces again from El Glendo, absolute master on the decals and surfaces here. Love, love, love this. A few extra decals over the top of it to sort of muddy it up, but it already looks pretty worn, which I think is a great thing. And then of course we've got tyre marks in here if people are messing around in the area. I actually didn't go as far as to put too much trash around. I wanted to keep it relatively clean because I've done things like these little mural walls over here, which you can see Booty Addict has come in and tagged. Oh dear, naughty. But I wanted to try and make it look like it was actually quite a nice estate that has been cleaned up, that is reasonably well maintained, even though they've got an old basketball court here and there is still the odd bits of graffiti around it. But not like it's like super, super run down. That's why we've got these nicer surface areas out here, just framing and giving some decoration, I suppose, to the communal areas around this side. Little garden in the middle as well. So yeah, no trash around, like someone's actually going around and maintaining it, which I thought was quite important here. And then we do have a bit of sort of overgrown dappled grass on the side as well. And then coming back to the smarter area, we have just tidied up this car park with a bit of edging, of course, as well. I did go through and change all of the lamp posts around here so it looks a little bit more pedestrian friendly. Really like how that's come out. We've also got the surfaces all the way around this building, so we've got various entrances on the back I wanted to honour there too, and around this side here as well, so we've got a little side access down there. But I think that all comes together pretty nicely, and actually one of my favourite views is this shot from the highway, where if we come down here, we're going to go past, obviously, the big broadcasting studios. We're going to go under the bridge, and you get these really nice tall buildings as you come down here. All teaming up to the medical centre down there, which I really like the effect of that. So yeah, all in all, pretty pleased with how it has turned out, particularly that little pool area. It's maybe a little bit exotic for Philadelphia, but I think it works quite nicely. And in the grand scheme of how this area looks across the city, you can see just adding those little bits of extra height over there starts to really build it up as we're heading off in that direction, as I've mentioned many a time at this point. But it does look quite bulked up and built up around the broadcasting studios now. So yeah, pretty pleased with that, with this rail line cutting through the area as well. So yeah, there we go. Let's just take one last little look at this high crime risk, which is still there. it's still in abundance. If we take a look at our info view, is that any better? Yeah, some of the buildings are starting to turn orange rather than red, so we'll see how that goes and monitor progress. I'm hoping, yeah, it's still operational, it's still working. So I'm hoping that continues to be the case. So for today, that is going to be it. If you have enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares are really greatly appreciated. Don't forget to check out Instant Gaming, and please do come and join our Discord. Help us get to 1,000 members in the Discord channel. All are linked in the description below. But that's all from me for now, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye bye.